Welcome to the National Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum in Cooperstown, New York. I'm Lindsay Berra, joined by former MLB All-Star Carlos Peña and curator John Odell, and we're talking about the Hall of Fame Connections episode, From Dirt in the Skirt to the Sandman. So we just went from the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League through the Yankees-Dodgers rivalry all the way to the guy with the best cut fastball and the most saves in the history of baseball.
Yeah, and it's a remarkable train that takes us there. But it starts off with the All-American Girls. This is the tunic that one of those women, her name was Audrey Wagner, and she was one of the players of the year, one of the best players of the league. She was there for 6 years, and sort of epitomizes what these women did. She started, her first year was the very first year of the league. Only 60 women playing. She was 15 years old.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
And continued playing. She just got better and better every year. And went to college while she was playing baseball in the All-American Girls. Ended up becoming a doctor. And that's one of those stories that you just see over and over again with these women.
You gotta love a uniform.
I can't even.
A tunic. This is a tunic.
Tunic. I played softball at the University of North Carolina, and we had to wear shorts, and I thought wearing shorts was bad enough to play baseball or softball. I can't imagine wearing an actual skirt.
And you know, the same thing that you experienced. It's like, you know, the strawberries. You know, it's like you really have to, you know, when you're committing to a slide, you're committing to a slide. You know,
And this is one thing we must find out. Like, people do not, unless you played, unless you took a slide into second base and you got a strawberry, people do not understand how much they hurt.
Yeah. Well, and
I mean, they're
in
uncomfortable.
shorts, like you're committing not only to the slide, but to several hours of removing small bits of dirt with a tweezer.
That's right.
A real thing.
And then, you know, all the first aid ointments and everything else that
Yeah.
you got. There's the funny scene from A League of Their Own, you know, the movie, which is just
The
wonderful.
real dirt in the skirt, May, dirt in the skirt.
That's it. That's where it comes from. If you look at this tunic, you can see the connection between that movie and these tunics.
Yeah.
It's just remarkable to see really the detail that Penny Marshall did to make her tunics look like these tunics and to really evoke that first women's league of any kind.
And they went over to Cuba.
They went to Cuba in 1947. The league had been doing very well, and a distinctive of that league was to bring all the women together and put them in a single spring training site where they could make sure everybody had the same training, same good training. They also did a little rearranging of some rosters there. They would trade players back and forth, not team to team, but the league would do it so that they would say, oh, this team was a little bit weaker, let's move somebody over. Parity, so we can create parity within this league and keep the excitement up for the full length of the season. So they went to Havana, Cuba. The Dodgers had just left Havana, Cuba, because they'd had their spring training. Now they were in their regular season. The women come in and outdrew what the Dodgers did. So the Cuban fans are loving seeing these women play in their exhibition, their spring training games.
There's a connection there as well. You know, I'm from the Dominican Republic, and I know that in Cuba, the Cubans had a lot to do with Dominican Republic loving and falling in love with the game of baseball.
Right.
So it's just cool to see all these connections.
Yeah, we call the Cubans the apostles of baseball, because it was the Cubans who, like, they fell in love with it first, and then they carried it throughout the Spanish-speaking world in the Caribbean.
Now,
So
the Dodgers were there as well, you said, right before the ladies went over.
So the Dodgers were there first, and then the ladies came afterwards. But the reason the Dodgers were there was because of Jackie Robinson. So Jackie Robinson, who had, you know, the Dodgers the previous year had all sorts of problems with the racism and Jim Crow South of Florida. Issues where, you know, you couldn't have blacks and whites playing on the same field together. And, you know, it's just really the kind of thing that we read about now in the history books. That same kind of systematic racism was not the case down in Cuba.
It's so interesting that you say that, because my grandfather used to tell stories about Elston Howard, his first year with the Yankees, which was much later, 1955. They were one of the last teams to integrate, but even that much further on, the Jim Crow South was still really, really tough for Elston. Couldn't ride the buses, couldn't eat in the same restaurants on the road with the Yankees.
Right.
So I can only imagine that many years earlier what Jackie Robinson would have gone through.
Bob Gibson says the same thing when he was with the Cardinals. And that was one of the reasons why the Indians ended up going out to Arizona as the first team to do that.
And speaking of that, we're talking about all these old-time players from the Dominican Republic that were in the big leagues, like the Alous, the Manny Mota, these guys, Marichal, they had to also go through those difficult times as well.
It's still so crazy to think about how far ahead of the civil rights movement baseball was and how long they had to deal with that for.
Yeah, that's right.
So how do we arrive?
Yeah, so how do we get the next step? So Dodgers went to Havana in order because of Jackie Robinson. Jackie Robinson ends up playing a lot of World Series with this guy. Now, this is all protected. So this is
Mickey Mantle.
Mickey Mantle, and I'm gonna hand this one over to you. The rest of them we'll pull on our gloves, but this one is protected. No gloves for this one because it's already protected.
We can touch this, even though Cy Berger thought so much of them that he dumped them overboard into the ocean.
Isn't that incredible?
I find this fascinating.
So this is Mickey Mantle's first year getting a Topps card. Now, he had a Bowman card in '51, but '52 is his first Topps card. This beautiful, beautiful Topps card.
Yeah, he's so young.
And Topps would issue them in 6 different series, so that basically one a month, so that you would continue going out and buying every month. But you get to 6 months out of baseball, and you're getting into football season, and there's some leftover cards that haven't sold, so the mom and pop store near you hasn't bought any more. Cases and cases and cases of cards from the 1952 series were languishing in a warehouse for Topps for 8 years. Cy Berger was the guy who designed this card along with Woody Gelman, and he was the face of Topps. And he said, we need this warehouse space. And he found a cheap barge to put on. This is the weirdest thing. It's like, I would think that the easiest thing would be just to truck it and burn it, but there's so much.
Put them in a trash can and
wait,
match.
First of all, how much is this card worth?
So these cards in good condition now are going for about 7 figures.
All right.
And they dumped a whole boatload of them,
which is why they move it out onto the barge, dump it in the ocean.
Where maybe these
the
were
boat.
I may go on a treasure hunt myself.
You might have to, but I think they're going to be soggy by now.
But if
maybe they're worth more because they're soggy.
If you find them all, though, you're going to drive the price down. You're going to change the whole market, and it's all going to be Carlos's fault.
Nobody's
Why in the ocean? I mean, there were no shredders or.
That's the cheapest, fastest way for him to get it out of his warehouse. Apparently, was to get it on the barge and get it out. And so, of course, there are a lot of other cards that were just like that, but Mickey Mantle's Mickey Mantle.
All right, John, so tell me a little bit about this jersey in particular.
Okay, so this jersey is a jersey worn by a fellow named Don Zimmer.
Now, yeah, I know.
You know Don Zimmer, right? Tell me a little bit about Don Zimmer. What do you know from Don Zimmer?
He was all over, when I was in Tampa, he was there, he was one of our advisors, and he was awesome to talk to. He helped me out a lot.
Oh,
yeah,
great.
So very dear to my heart.
I knew Don Zimmer pretty well, too, growing up. He was real good friends with my grandfather, played against him for years with the Dodgers, and my grandmother was good friends with his wife, Soot. But every player that I know that played for the Rays, they all have these amazing Zimmer stories because he was just ubiquitous. He was always around at those games, even as he got older and was just sitting in the stands, but he was always there.
Yeah. So Don Zimmer's got this great story. He was first beamed in 1953. That's the story of Don Zimmer. He had this great promise, and then he got hit in the head once. The first time he got hit in the head, he said he was down on the ground. He said, "Is it bleeding?" They said no, and he passed out. The next day he wakes up, everybody's around him, and he said, "So, how is everything? What happened in the game yesterday?" And they said, that was over a week ago. He'd been in a coma for more than a week. He'd had 2 operations on his brain to relieve pressure. Then 3 years later, he get hit in the face again. Never fulfilled his baseball promise, but was such a smart man, loved baseball so much, was the kind of man, as you know, that you want to have around your organization. And so he was never out of work. He was coaching, he was scouting, he was managing, he'd go back to coaching. He was a bench coach for the New York Yankees. He was the bench coach for the New York Yankees the year after this man, Mariano Rivera, made his debut. And
now, to touch that, we're going to put gloves.
I'm going to take it first.
You go ahead and take it
here we go. So this is Mariano's last All-Star game cap.
Now pitching, number 42, Mariano Rivera.
I remember this All-Star game very well. I was out in the outfield like bleacher area when they started playing the Metallica song, and he ran out. I was with some of my MLB.com colleagues at the time, and it was really quite an experience to feel that electricity as he came running out. But I can't imagine what it was like to hear that if you were waiting in the on-deck circle.
Let me tell you something. When you heard Metallica come on, you knew the game was over. And you know, we're over there in Yankee Stadium, and you heard the song come over the speakers. It's like, all right, guys, pick up your bats. Let's go back inside. You know, it's over. I'll tell you this, though. I did get one hit against him. You know, I was 1 for 12, I believe, in my career. And it was my last at-bat. I got a walk-off hit off him. And I was like, okay, Lord, I don't ever want to face him ever again. I want to finish in a good one. But, man, it was just a devastating pitch. That cutter, you knew it was coming, and you couldn't hit it.
Yeah.
Was that one hit you got on a cutter?
It wasn't a cutter, a backdoor cutter. But listen, you have to swing where the ball, you know, you cannot believe your eyes. How in the world do you even sort that out? Don't believe your eyes, swing at a different spot where you know the ball is going to cut to. That's very hard to do.
Yeah, I was going to say, because you have so many years of like, if the ball's coming in on this trajectory, that means that by the time, like you see it out here, by the time it gets to the plate, it has to be here,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
Correct.
And if it's instead here, you just broke your back.
He threw a pitch that didn't make sense to your brain. Impossible to hit. Yeah. Good luck.
Yeah, one pitch, Hall of Fame. Not a bad
Awesome.
way of doing it, huh?
Amazing.
John, thank you so much for the tour from Dirt in the Skirt to the Sandman. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of our Hall of Fame Connection series. If you'd like to learn more about the people, places, and artifacts featured in this video, go to baseballhall.org, where you can plan your visit to the National Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum in Cooperstown, New York, and discover your own connections to the game.
Thanks for watching. For more incredible stories, check out our Hall of Fame Connection series. And don't forget to subscribe. Plaque!